Good morning, and welcome back to the latest live from PJ&C, Pajamas and Coffee Society. We're so excited. I was not here on Wednesday live, unfortunately, due to a doctor's appointment. So it felt a little odd that I haven't been able to be involved in this group in the same way this week. So we're very, very excited. We're back on a Friday morning, but we have one of my very dear friends with us and somebody that's a little bit of an expert when it comes to the subject that we're talking about today. So we decided to have her join us, and I'm going to have her introduce herself in a moment because everybody mispronounces her name to date. Anybody I've been around. So she gets to tell everyone her name exactly the correct way so nobody messes it up. But she is an expert when it comes to the art of transformation. And we are going to apply that conversation to our group in entrepreneurs today. So I normally kick it off, do all the introductions, but I'm not going to do that today. You can do it for us. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. So, everybody, this is our very good friend. And again, Licia, I'm going to have you say your name because in that way, no one is at fault of mispronunciation.
And it's okay if they do. My name is Licia Rester, and thank you, Marissa and
Of
Althea, for
course.
inviting me. This is just so fun to start a Friday this way.
Yes.
Um, so, I've been involved in transformation for really my entire career. And it was a calling that I had even as a teenager to really serve people throughout the world. And I have had the great privilege of working and being mentored by what I consider masters in the field of spiritual psychology as well as transformation. And when I talk about transformation, really for me, the gold standard is positive, profound, and permanent change, whether that's in the one's personal life or professional life. And really, as I have been working in this topic, it's really one and the same.
Yes.
So, really, and this is no new news, all transformation really starts within, and then the outer begins to reflect the inner transformation. So, I just love doing it. I love serving people in that way, serving professionals in particular, the marriage between professional and personal transformation, and also the marriage between the personality and the spiritual levels, as well as the marriage between education, psychology, and technology. So that's kind of my wheelhouse.
And it's interesting because you and I have had several conversations. And I feel like every time you and I get to speak, I understand your path a bit more
Mm,
because it's such a big path, is my simple explanation that what you have been called to do. I won't even say chose because I almost went there. I went, no, no, no. Called to do in life is a bigger path and it's a bit more, I don't want to say ambiguous because it's one of these things that's like each person will get something individually out of it. And yet your path is similar, as in, you know what they need, you're on a mission, you see what they need. Getting them there is that little bit of that gray area because we've talked about it many times. I mentioned this the other day that I can have a conversation with my children 20 times and say the same thing. And there comes somebody else in the family and says this exact same thing. And they go, oh, thank you. And I think it's applicable to what you do as well. Because again, it's how do you get through to that person
yeah.
in the most positive, beautiful, delicate, gentle way
Mm,
and maximum effect from that conversation, from that occasion, whatever it may be. And so we really, honestly, I think everybody should have someone like Licia in their circle. I'm sorry to say we are very privileged, but again, that's why we're so honored to have her here with PJ&C. But we wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about the misconception I think I know I had. Lee, you can chime in anytime, but I think almost all female entrepreneurs may have this misconception, and we're going to the expert today, that this is who I am. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. The thought process of guess what? Hold on, buckle up, because you're going to go through the depths of emotions. You are going to go through so many realizations of who you are. And it's also going to slam you into the edge of your comfort zone and require you to live in that uncomfortable stage in order to grow. And now I hope I properly scared anybody listening to this, but at the same time, I do not want to scare anyone, because my point to this is it's required, it's necessary, and it will be the most enjoyable process of your life. So, would you have anything, either of you, to add to this conversation?
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah, go ahead, Lee. I certainly have, and I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
Yeah, I have felt that way. I have actually tried to, I guess I can't say an entrepreneur really, because that's not the frame of mind I was in, but I've tried to like start little things where I'd be my own boss, like selling Avon, jewelry, makeup, that kind of stuff. But when I actually decided to be a true entrepreneur, then yes, there's a lot of realizations that I come to, especially one of the hardest ones is it was my comfort zone, getting out of that comfort zone. It's still a challenge, but since I've started and I know where it takes me, and I know that I can get past it and I'll be okay. It especially like doing the podcast. I remember when I first wanted to start, Missy would always be like, "Well, you gotta be on camera. You gotta be on camera." I was like, "No, no, no." It was so frightening to me. I don't know why, but it was so frightening to me. And then we started PJ&C, and I am actually doing a live on my own on Monday. I was scared to death when, first of all, I was told I was going to be doing my own, and then secondly, actually doing it. So, but the more I do it, the easier it gets. Well, I won't say easier, but I'm not as frightened, or I'm not as nervous, or I'm not as apprehensive as I was at the beginning.
Licia, in Lee's defense, you need to know there's a 28-year history of friendship between us.
Oh, how lovely.
So the rules were defined that I volunteer Lee for a lot of stuff. And I don't know why she never pushes back. I do feel bad when she could.
Because I know it's for my own good. That's why.
Yeah, it's on me. I volunteer her. I'm just like, okay, so you're going to do this, right? Yes. And I walk away. Yeah. And she doesn't complain. And now I'm realizing how much I do that. But it doesn't mean it's going to stop, because, Licia, we have an agreement between us that because of our lifelong friendship and how amazing our friendship has always been, it's a gold standard for me for other friendships in my life. And because of it, Lee and I have this funny thing that, I tell her, well, you're either coming with me or I'll drag you.
Nice.
And she doesn't.
You're kicking and screaming.
Yes. So, but she doesn't say no quite often. She always just kind of gives that, okay. Okay. So,
and you know what? That's the requisite, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's really the willingness, despite, as that old cliche says, courage is, doing it anyway, despite the fear. Yes. So, I really applaud you, Lee. And the thing that's really, from my point of view, the turmoil that gets triggered when we make any significant decision, self-honoring decision, is actually the good news. Because to the extent that we know how to work with ourselves, and Lee, you're, sharing about how you just went for it, and then that really pushed the edge of your comfort zone, expanded it. And so now you have a wider zone of confidence, of self-trust, of skill. And that to me is really the path of life. And the entrepreneurial choice accelerates it in certain ways. And so do other major life challenges, deciding to have children, that is probably one of the biggest accelerators
Yes.
in terms of self growth. So there are lots of different ways to do it, and I can really relate to you in terms of entrepreneurialism. It's a never ending learning and growing. And the thing that's really beautiful about it, from my point of view, is we don't just do it for ourselves or even our loved ones and families. We do it for those whom we serve through our business.
Yes.
Because the higher and the more expanded we are in our consciousness and in our own maturity, the more that we can serve those, and who are just a couple steps behind us in that same path.
Yes.
So that's the kind of, to me, that's the bigger prize of all of this, is that we become more and more uh, authentically empowered, and then we also can stand in that space for those who, in that moment, could use some extra confidence. I was just talking to a client, it was either yesterday or before, and I said, as a coach, our clients borrow our confidence in
That's
themselves,
wonderful. Yes.
because we see the vision of their potential. We see who they truly are. And that's a lot easier for us to do than the individual themselves. It's a lot easier to see somebody else's greatness sometimes than our own greatness.
Yes.
And so our clients can then borrow our vision of them and really hold and really support that, kind of in a way of what you two do as growth sisters and friends. You borrow each other's vision of each other's greatness.
Yeah, you know what? That is beautiful, first of all, and
Mhm.
exactly why we needed to talk to you today. But could we just do this like every morning?
Right.
Just hang out and have coffee together, because man, I feel so empowered to just go out and conquer the day because of you. I think it's okay, you're totally hired. Anybody that's listening to this, now you know why to become friends with her and also to be a client of hers as well. I appreciate what you said so much, because as you said that, my initial thought was imagining myself on my timeline. And when I was starting out, even starting over with my second business, Grit and King, it's easy for us to go into the comparison game,
Mhm.
especially when we're brand new. And we're looking at the people and we're researching people within our preferred industry, and we're looking up at them. And we are scared because we're not at their level. And being humble, we don't want to look down at anyone, which is great, wonderful. Humble is required to go through transformation and growth. However, we forget that there are some people that just need that beginner example too.
Yeah.
That's all they need. They just need to see somebody else having the bravery to step up and say, okay, I'm new. However, this is what I'm doing. And that is a wonderful, wonderful reminder for all of us as entrepreneurs. So thank you for that. That is just a beautiful memory that I'm going to hold on to this one. It's gonna process all weekend for sure.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, how I envision it, really, because for me, the the thing that really calls me into this work is really this, and I think we all are similar, is this deep calling to serve, to really serve humanity, serve our tribe or whatever group of people that we are called to serve. And I just love that you're here serving other female entrepreneurs. What a beautiful way. And my vision of it is really this legacy of love, where we, take the hand of that person to our left and to our right, and metaphorically, the one to our right perhaps is the one who has a little more experience.
Yes.
The one to our left is the one who has a little less. We're here and we're all joining hands
Yes.
to support each other in serving and uplifting the humanity and this world at this time that desperately needs it. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you touched on everybody that has an individual path, and that's something that we talk about quite often too, in our group, within our company as well, with students. That I try to remember, especially with somebody that's a young entrepreneur, and they're kind of in that spinning stage where they had the big idea and now they're kind of coming down to the reality. Dopamine's kind of wearing off and it's the oh, what do I do moment. Nobody's going to steal your idea because nobody is you.
Yeah.
And you are an individual and your path is individual. So just go out there and just keep pushing forward. And to your point, even further, what we see online is only a very small sliver of somebody's day to day.
Right.
So take it with a grain of salt and understand that's the image that they are projecting out there. I'm not saying it's bad or misleading. I'm just stating it as a fact that it's a sliver of their world. That is it. And so understand they are still sitting there with their computer. They are still pushing it closed sometimes saying, I quit today. Guilty. All of us have done it. We all have days where we say we've just done enough and I cannot be an adult anymore and I'm going to go sit.
I love that. Yeah.
Me. Okay. Or I just take off for the pool and I'm like, I just put in my AirPods. I don't care if I'm the only person there and I just sit there. I have to sit with myself for a moment. It'll be better in a moment, and it doesn't matter is the point. And so what people see online is not necessarily the entire stories. All I want anybody to ever remember. And to the point, I was a salon owner for 15 years, and I actually just talked to somebody about this yesterday, and it just amused me when clients were new, they come in for the first time, and they'd say, oh, boy, you're a world traveler, and you do all these things. And I'm thinking, no. But that was the viewpoint they received from seeing my trips with my children. And because of being an entrepreneur, I prioritized off-season travel with my children when it wasn't so busy. Like I would plan springtime to do a trip with them before school let out so that we would go and we wouldn't have to wait 2 hours for restaurants and things like that. That was important to me. So we always tried to celebrate their school year ending and before everybody else got out, things like that. So the perception was I traveled all the time. The reality was I was at home when I wasn't working, building my second company and sliding in some extra days with my kids to make up for the dual role I was presented with. So my point of bringing this up is that when somebody actually gets the chance to create, we'll just call it their brand again, because again, there's personal branding and also professional branding. But when you see that brand of them online, no, a lot went into even them getting that picture online. A lot went into creating and crafting that message. And there's probably a lot more behind it and a lot of bruises and bumps that you are not seeing. And so it really is a very intricate task for what we are presenting and to get going and having that voice. But to your point, it's that calling that gets us there every day. It's the calling that gets us up. It's the calling that gets us to push forward and to do it day in and day out. And that's why, Alicia, I know you and I had a conversation about this previously, that knowing your why should be at the very beginning of your journey as an entrepreneur. Because that is what gets us up every day. That's what drives us even on the bad days. And it is individual. And so do you have any tips or let's just say inspiration for someone to find their path? Because again, you're in that transformational space where you're helping somebody uncover their truth. So how do they, when they're going through that transformation, turn it around and say, that's the person I'm called to serve?
Yes. I do. Yeah. In fact, that very question was the impetus for me to co-author one of the books I wrote called The Soul Purpose Method, because I noticed, I was at the time one of the lead faculty at the University of Santa Monica, which at the time was awarding master's degrees in spiritual psychology. And one of the common themes that people had was, well, what is my purpose?
Yes.
I believe that I'm here to do something, but what is that thing that I'm supposed to be doing? And a lot of people put tremendous pressure on themselves. Like if I don't find it, it's kind of like, I've got to find my soulmate. I've got to find my soul purpose. Like there's these things that, people who are on the path of transformation and self-growth often wrestle with.
Yes.
And for me, it's Here's the good news about that. It's not about trying to find it.
Yes.
It's already there.
Yes.
And where it is in that level of our consciousness that I call the true self, the higher consciousness. So the job of all of us is to do our best to do those things that will support us from disidentifying with our ego and personality and re-identifying and reawakening into that higher consciousness, because in that level of consciousness we know already what we're here to do.
Yes.
And and for me it's nothing, it's really love. I mean, ultimately it boils down to love, and then there are millions of permutations of what that looks like out in the world.
Yes.
And the other thing I also want to share about purpose is it's even though there is a North Star typically on purpose, it can shift and it can take very different forms. So I wouldn't put pressure if one has just a sense of I want to do something, I want to help. That's just fine, because part of the journey in this life is for us to grow and evolve and allow things to come in that help us refine
Yes.
our path. And typically what we'll do is, as we look back, we can say, oh my gosh, there was that seed.
Yes.
And this is kind of full circle. But you don't need to know all the steps across the river. You just need to know what the next one is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And be attuned to that.
Yes. I love that explanation. And the gentleman, and I know privately you and I've talked about this before, I am a huge advocate of finding what your purpose is and your why. And I ask all young entrepreneurs, what's your why? But the gentleman that I worked with, his advice was start back in your childhood. Walk forward. Just walk through your life and meditate on it. And you will find that throughout your lifetime, there is an expert status, per se, that will be built in an area because of just experience and overcoming whatever it may be. And I'll never forget the example he used was a young woman he was working with that worked within real estate, but I apologize, I can't remember exactly where. It was an online based venture, and it was helping other women become entrepreneurs and I think investors in real estate, if I remember correctly. She couldn't figure out the direction, and he kept pressuring her. Let's go back to your childhood. Let's talk about your childhood. Oh, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Well, it turned out it did. She was raised in a concentration camp, or I'm sorry, I apologize. Not what would be the correct word? In a war situation, whereas a refugee camp. I apologize. Woo, that was very big stuff. Refugee situation. And the reason why it was important was she was in an arranged marriage, got out of the situation, became a single parent in a very, very difficult situation, and then got herself out of a poverty situation as an entrepreneur. Oh, I think Lee dropped off. She'll be back. And that was very important because that was her through line, and that's what drove her to help other women. So that moment of aha, I never will forget hearing that story. And that story helped me identify who I was supposed to help. So I think, again, by gathering together and discussing it and being open is a huge part of it. But I do have a very specific question. And I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Have you ever heard of two people having the exact same identity in their why?
People have a lot of similarity when they go higher and higher.
Yes.
But the individual,
Yes.
how would we say it? The individual embodiment or the individual expression, I think would be the better word, always has a slightly different nuance to it.
Yes. Yes.
Because we're individuals. And so we're going to bring our context into it. So, I mean, I think in some regards, we probably could have a conversation and all three of us agree we all are kind of doing the same thing.
Correct.
And we're doing it all in very different ways, you know?
That's exactly the point I was getting at. Because we talk about it all the time that you don't have to worry because even if we want to help other female entrepreneurs, let's just use a very general topic like we are right now, the way we get there even will be different. The messaging will be different. And each of us have different experiences that we can bring to the table.
Exactly.
And that's it, the reason why it's so important to discuss that part of it, because you don't have to worry. There's room for all of us at the table.
Yeah.
And there's somebody that needs to hear it from you.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's right. Exactly right. Yeah. I wanted to return to one thing because
Yes.
I loved the thing to say, like, you know, try not to compare, even though that is what our egos just love to do.
Yes. Yes.
And depending on at what point of the day, we're either better or worse, you know, like
absolutely.
It's like this kind of, you know, like this carnival act all the time with the ego. But the thing that I love to say is, don't compare your backstage with someone else's front stage.
I love
wow. Mm-hmm.
I think, okay, I'm sorry that that's the end of this conversation. She just dropped the mic and she's walking out. Why? Okay. This is normally a private conversation, but Licia is going to be starting this amazing TikTok series, and she's going to dominate the world just based on that statement right there.
So Lee,
wow,
I'm going to call Marisa out. Lee, she just did what she does to you.
Yes,
exactly. Yes, she did.
Suddenly, I have a TikTok series. Yeah, exactly.
Lee, what do I do to everybody? That's great homework. Go ahead and
don't suggest anything, because if you suggest it, it becomes your responsibility.
I'm going to be mentored by Lee on how to navigate the Marisa momentum. This is going to be called Marisa Momentum.
I like it. We might have to use that as a catchphrase. I don't mean to do it, but it's, you know, again, to your point, when I see something and I have that flash of a vision for someone, but what you just said is so incredible that it's so true. We do. We're sitting backstage and we're sitting and typing and we're making notes and having Post-it notes all around us and haven't eaten all day. And we see somebody show up and their eyelashes are on point and they're sitting at some corporate desk with the perfect lighting. Who cares? Who cares?
Yeah.
It's so true.
I mean, and we do it all the time without even realizing it, just as you pointed out, you know. And that's why I love it was so fun to hear, Marisa, your intention for this podcast. Like, come in your pajamas. Honestly, I'm outing myself. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
And so for me, using that metaphor, Marisa is really inviting us all to share our backstage.
Yes.
Because that's really where the support is needed. Yes. And to recognize we're all just humans doing the best we can at any given moment. You know, we're all on a path of growth. We're all on our own path of both, you know, tumultuous times and great success. Yes. I mean, that is the path of life. So how beautiful that we can have the opportunity to support one another in that path, because that's really what the whole point is.
Yes.
To support each other.
Yes. And 15 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, all of the technology was not present.
Right.
But we were all still, she keeps dropping off today. And she's actually in our podcast room. She's visiting us. No, why you keep dropping off today, Lee?
I think my camera is still sleepy.
Oh, okay.
Lee, don't compare your camera's backstage with our camera's front stage. Just
exactly.
I think this conversation could last all day and require more than just coffee. But see, I'm telling you, I called you out. Look what happened, Licia. You did it. This one's on you, Licia. Not me, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want to note that officially it wasn't me this time. But I think, you know, that is such an amazing idea, to just be present with yourself and just sit with yourself and just say, this is where I'm at. I think my message that I received from this today personally was, I wrote it down. Don't be afraid of your beginner status. And it's something that we talk about in different words, but just being that clear that being a beginner, we always like to talk about is not being an imposter.
No, exactly. That's great. That's
Yes.
my takeaway. That's a beautiful distinction.
Yes. Because a
Yes.
lot of times imposter syndrome creeps in immediately when we start a new project. I actually use the metaphor very often about wanting to participate in climbing Mount Everest.
Mhm.
No, I'm never going to. Sorry, guys. I mean, it's not going to happen. You'll find me on the beach way quicker than you'll find me in a mountain ever. So let's just put
Me
that out
too.
there.
Me too.
But if I ever hit my head and said, I'm going to climb a mountain, Lee, make sure I get checked out first.
Yeah.
But would I be able to go that first day, put on a backpack and start climbing? Absolutely not.
Right.
It requires months, if not years, of dedication to a different regimen with your diet, with routine in your exercise, training, all sorts of things that we would never think of for a simple hike, let's just say, in comparison.
Right.
If I went and jumped on a plane today and showed up at the base of Mount Everest and decided to start climbing, I would feel like an imposter. Well, that's wrong. I'm a beginner and I should have started with the bunny hill versus Mount Everest. Mixed metaphors, but I hope it proves the point. My status as a beginner doesn't make it that I shouldn't be there. I just need millions of little tiny steps in between to get to the top.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it takes.
And I think there's something really profound in what you're saying, Marissa, because we have multiple levels in consciousness. So our inner teacher often will guide us. And when there's the distinction that you just made so beautifully between beginner and imposter,
Yes.
again, that comes from comparing somebody else's front stage to
Yes.
our backstage.
Yes.
Like I'm supposed to be Tony Robbins on day one of me trying to be, trying to be a transformation leader.
Yes.
Well, that, obviously is not accurate. And then there's also, and this is subtler and a little more edgy, but I want to bring it out in terms of transparency. There's a real push in our current culture, particularly the digital marketing space, that says, claim that you're an expert. You have to be an expert. Everybody's an expert.
Yes.
And so I think people of integrity have a rub with that and just go, and in attempt to try to follow best practices, they
Yes.
try to do that. And then their own inner integrity says that's inaccurate.
Yes.
And then that also perpetuates the imposter syndrome.
Absolutely.
So, there's multiple layers of this dynamic. For me, the thing that I come back to is to say, look, as a beginner, you also have a gift. As just a beginner, you have a gift because you are showing other beginners that they can do it too.
Yes.
In that place, you are not an imposter. You are honoring where you are in your stage and
Yes.
evolution and serving, which is ultimately the goal. Even if you were at the top of the mountain or
Yes.
at the base of the mountain, that's ultimately the goal. So just be clean and clear with how you can serve at any stage, and you don't have to push yourself to try to serve the people, that are at the top of the mountain. You don't need to do that because there are thousands of people who made the decision 14 seconds later than you did.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and something that we actually include in our program is that being an expert actually takes 4 pillars. And I spoke about it a couple, I think it was last week on my life, that yes, you have to have expert status through education within the industry of your choice. Through education. Now that might be custom for each person. I'm not going to judge or tell somebody how to do that, but it requires education. Let's just say education period for expert status to grow. But what we always talk about is that education leads to experience. Experience leads to expert status.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process. It isn't claim it day one and you're there.
Right.
But that is only one of the pillars. The other one comes from business education. One of the other ones comes from education of how to work the business, and then personal growth. So to us, it takes all four of those pillars in order to equal expert status in the long run. It is, again, a process. It is a long-term path that you've committed to yourself.
So I'm going to pull a Marisa moment, Marisa momentum
I
moment.
already know what's going. Okay, go for it.
Have you written your book on that?
Oh, I knew that was coming. I'm in the process. Oh my goodness. Lucia, I absolutely adore you and love you, and I cannot argue at the moment. So I'm just going to say yes. I will work on it.
Yes, and may I just say, and I'm really coming. I'm just really being quite transparent in this moment. Just know that that is something I am more than happy to support you in.
Thank you.
I am currently designing a new, just because of this whole thing, people have this incredible wisdom, but haven't yet brought it fully out and
Yes.
need support in really organizing it and sculpting it and crafting it in a way that would really support their readers. And that is literally what I'm working on today and have been working on, how to accelerate that process.
Yes.
So
yes.
First, I'm in that mode of doing that.
And you know what? We have spoken about that before, so I cannot argue with you at all. And thank you. Your segue. I'm not saying that was the end of the subject, and I'm not pushing it aside.
Yeah.
I just want to say, can you explain when would somebody come work with you and why? Because again, this has been a wonderful, interesting conversation. We could continue this conversation for 3 hours. So who is the ideal client for you?
Great.
Or partner, whatever you may call it. And I would like to define which one. When would they come work with you and what would be the result? And I know that's a bit of a big question, but if you could please try to break.
I'm happy to help or clarify that.
Yeah.
So I work with aspiring authors and experts and coaches, really transformation leaders.
Yes.
To launch their six-figure book business in 90 days.
Wow.
And yeah, thank you. So that currently is, I've had lots of, just as I was saying, this has been an evolution.
Yes.
And last year I focused entirely on working with people who wanted to write their book, utilizing a new method that I have designed first to really write my own book that integrates the neuroscience and power of storytelling with the steps of transformation, the psychological steps of transformation. This year I'm adding to that because once somebody has a book, that is fantastic, and they need to monetize it. Yes. So how do you monetize a book? Well, unless you're Oprah or Deepak Chopra or Tony Robbins, you're not going to be monetizing it by selling a gajillion copies. That's not how you do it. You do it through your back-end offers. And that's the good news, because that's really where you can help support people in their transformation. Just like you were saying, Marisa, in your thing, in your pillars, you need to learn, then you need to practice and apply. And eventually that consistency creates integration and ultimately embodiment. And when we are embodied in a particular thing, that's when we have transformed. So how do you support your clients through that journey is really the subject that I'm working on right now. And how do you do it quickly and effectively?
Well, 90 days is an amazing, amazing time frame. And to me, it's, when you said that, I went, that's doable.
Yeah.
Although the second thought was, that's a mountain. And I thought, but you have Licia with as the tour guide. That was my thought process as soon as you said that.
Great feedback.
Yeah. And I went, if you got Licia with, anything's possible. Because she's what was Rocky Balboa's coach's name? What was it? Come on, Lee, help me out here.
You mean his His manager?
Yeah,
Um, you put me on a spot. I can't
I
remember.
know. But what? Well, we're gonna have to find a
Mickey. Mickey.
fitting. There you go. Fitting name to appropriately address Alicia, and then that way a coach name that's appropriate because I
That's funny.
image of Rocky in my head there for a moment. But it's true, having the ideal partner on a journey because it's I'm in the process of getting together my first book, and I'll say this to anybody that one of the hardest things is getting it out of your head. And one of the steps that helped me, and I spoke to the publisher about this, was divorcing myself from the emotions, from the viewpoint of not all the details are necessary.
Correct.
And then taking not all the details are necessary, like well, this happened and then this happened and this happened, but getting to the part of the impact
Yes.
is really the point. So that was great advice that I received. However, getting it from all of the events in somebody's head, for example, if it's a personal story, down onto paper and then having it presented in a way that will then affect others is the biggest struggle that I've been really fixated on. And so that I think personally, I can apply it and I can understand when I would work with you and say, okay, guess what? Here's the idea. I have it flushed out to this point. How do I make the impact?
Exactly.
So you are the person to help them make the right impact within the book or through a course, I know as well, or retreats. I know we've talked about that. But I think it's all inclusive. If you're going to work with her, just go for it. That's my advice. And just hand it over and say, listen, I want to start here with the book, but then I want to do this and I want to do that, and lay out the path and say, how can I do these things?
Yes, exactly.
Is that a good way to put it? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There is a structured path
Okay.
one can take, just like climbing the mountain. You don't, if you had somebody who was your guide, your Sherpa,
Yes.
it wouldn't be just like walk wherever you want on the path.
Yes.
It would be like, no, we're going from this point to exactly this point.
And then you were going to rest.
Doing this point, and then we're doing this point. So that's it. It's really what I experience is what people really want is clarity.
Yes.
People who are really committed and go-getters aren't saying, I don't want to work. What they're saying is, I don't want to waste time.
Yes.
On false starts and dead ends. So if you have a clear path, just give me the path, give me the steps, and I'll do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody's looking for the best, I always say the guidebook to the journey. And there's not enough out there. I'll tell you, Alicia, I talk about this all the time, that if you go into any bookstore, but let's use Barnes and Noble as an example, and you go today, walk through the book section or the section for business. How many of those books, I dare anybody to actually sit there and pull out all the books that are by female authors. The significance of the male dominated part of the business industry, unfortunately, has been present for too long. I was thinking about all of the sales books I was required to read over the years, and Little Red Book of Selling, no, masculine. A lot of the books that are out there and that are iconic are male perspective books. So I encourage anyone that has that ability or that inkling to put things out into the world that can make us all better and serve as guidebooks should start thinking about it, start writing Post-it notes on your bathroom mirror. Doesn't matter, but start. And then hook up with Alicia. That would be my next stage of advice. So, Alicia, if somebody would want to get in contact with you, talk to you about this, would LinkedIn be the best? Website, what would be the best for you?
Oh, that's such a good question. Right now, because I'm retooling this offer, I think that really the best way it would be to just reach out to me via email.
Okay.
And that would be Licia, Licia, at selfhelpstory.com.
Wonderful. Lee will drop that in the comments afterwards as well for anybody that wants to do that. And anybody can also DM PJ and C if you're having trouble getting hold of her. want to ask her any questions or come on a roundtable in the future with her, I think would be really, really fun too. So, one thing that we tell everybody though is that it's an open door policy. So, as you have new projects come out, we beg of you to spend a little more time with us, before you're rich and famous off of your TikTok. I'm just asking for an update.
That is how I'm not saying anything, Lee.
Right.
I'm not responding to that.
I just
I just slide it in. It's okay. It's a Kylie trick. It's a total Kylie thing. I come from a long line of salespeople, and like our families always don't kind of kind of deal. So I just slide it in and see if it sticks. I can see later. I said it first. I think it's more.
Here's my gauntlet on the TikTok. The TikTok could be a series of videos, me coaching you on your book, Marisa.
Okay, man.
See how
yeah, you do a good job.
Yeah.
I've decidedly. I'm sorry, you cannot be friends with Lisa. Nope. This doesn't work. No. I think this is actually the best thing ever. And Lee, no pressure, Lisa, but I told Lee ahead of time. I'm like, you're just gonna love her. You're just going to totally understand what I see in her and just absolutely have a great time with her. And you did not disappoint. So thank you for joining us today. We will be doing a podcast episode release soon with her. And please, you're welcome to come back anytime. We have other guests that come on at times too, so you can join in. We have different conversations every Friday. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a great way, as you said, to end the week on a high note. And we always, Lee and I both, you probably would totally agree with what I'm about to say, that we always feel so amazing after we do these.
Yes. It's been so much fun. Thank you so much.
You are welcome, and we cannot wait to talk to you soon. Good. So Lee, do you want to go ahead and finish us off today?
I do. So remember, everyone, if we can do it, you can do it.
Everybody have a wonderful day, and we will see you back next week.
Yes. Bye.